Good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Invest Success podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tim Emery, along with my buddy Jim Edenfield and my business partner. He makes all the good things happen, makes me look good. I do all the teaching. He does all the studying and the back end stuff. He makes the website go and this podcast go. And Jim, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
This is going to be, today we're going to talk about finding a deal. Okay. Invest Success, we're all about coaching people on how to find real estate, find fix and flips, make sure you know what you're talking about when you go find that deal, because you're going to put a lot of money into this, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into finding fix and flips. There are lots of deals all over the greater Denver area. In fact, they're all over the country. You need to know some specific things about finding these deals, though. So that's what we're going to go into. So, Jim, what's the number one thing that you think is important about finding a deal?
The numbers, you got to know your numbers. You've got to know realistic numbers. A lot of people get locked in. I'm going to do this section of town. I'm going to do that section of town. They come to Tim and I, which part of town is the best? Which part of town is the worst? And Tim says they're all good. There's no worse. Maybe a couple of really narrow areas, but it's not about where it is. It's does the numbers work there? And you kind of got to learn the different neighborhoods, because different neighborhoods, your price point's a little different, but you've got to learn those numbers and drill down in the neighborhoods. And another thing he's going to talk about, I know he's going to talk about it, but how to drill down in your neighborhood is you're looking at free tools like Zillow, like Google Maps. That's what our students probably use more than anything. Most of our students are not agents. Some of them have an agent as a spouse. They're partnered with agents, but a lot of our students find the deals on their own just using Zillow and Google. You've got to be able to look in and look at that neighborhood and analyze it and say, okay, for my ARV, I got to stick in this area in a certain time frame, and that's the way you're going to do your ARV correctly.
So an ARV is after repair value. Okay, so what's going to happen when you find this house? You put money into it, fix it up, and then you go to sell it. So that's what the ARV is. So yeah, Jim's right. Numbers are really important. The other really important is location. You have heard it since the day one. Anytime you've done any real estate education, all they say is location, location, location. And, if you watch half the real estate movies from the 70s, all you heard was location, location, location. But it's really so important and true. In this day and age, and it's really as these cities and towns have grown, the way they've grown, you need to stick into your neighborhoods. Okay, so we're here in Denver, and we'll give an example of Denver. Downtown Denver really was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So main part of downtown Denver, if you're looking at houses and stuff like that that are growing, you find a lot of those old houses. Now, as you go out from Denver to the suburbs, every suburb was different. If you watched, there was a lot of building going on in the 20s, and then not much building going on in the 30s and 40s, because we had the Great Depression and World War II. Out of the 40s, though, into the 50s, the explosion of properties was amazing. And if you look at Denver as kind of like a wagon wheel or center, once you start getting into those suburbs, the suburbs were built with 1 to 5 different options in them. And you should be able to, in most of the suburbs, find the option that looks like your house and find the exact one. So match those products and really staying in your neighborhoods. Because if one neighborhood was built in 1955 and the other neighborhood was built in 1965, they're totally different neighborhoods. They can be right next to each other. They can look almost the same, but that's really one of the things to look at. So, Jim, we talk about apples to apples, bees to bees, oranges to oranges. Tell me more about that.
You don't want to compare a ranch house to a split level. You want a ranch to a ranch. We don't do many condos, but condos to condos. Tri-levels are a different beast. Bi-levels, Tim's not a fan of bi-levels, but you get a house to house.
Actually, Jim, I am a big fan of bi-levels personally. I think they're pretty cool houses. They just don't sell that well.
And we're looking for houses that sell good.
Yeah.
But you don't want to compare, like, say, a tri-level or a ranch to something else, house to house. And you kind of go in and look at the houses, the style of the house also. And one thing, I'm probably getting ahead of him because I always do.
Yeah.
But when you're on Zillow, don't worry about 3-bedroom, 2-bath. What we want to worry about is 1,000 square foot compared to 1,000 square foot. Because what we do in the majority of our flips is we go in and we change those numbers. We take a 1-bath. If there's a hallway there in certain configurations, we convert that 1-bath to 2 baths. If it's a big enough space maybe for what was a TV room, we may convert that to a primary bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, a nice deluxe bathroom. So don't worry, don't get locked in. We had an agent we were in Mobile with, and she was torn. She says, I got a list of houses for you. She goes, well, I kept looking at all 3.2s. I'm like, stop looking at 3.2. What do you mean? How'd you know I do? I go, because all newbies, new agents that are working with, that's what they do. Square foot to square foot, same type of house. If it's a ranch, 1,000 square foot ranches within a small circle.
Yeah, and even if you get into the older Denver houses, again, they're different models there. You have a Denver Square, you have a raised ranch, you have a Tudor, and you really got to be careful of those houses because if you're trying to compare a Denver Square to a Tudor, there's a big difference there. Tudors tend to get more money. Personally, I'm not sure why. They tend to be darker, but they tend to get more money than the Denver Squares. And it's just in the neighborhood that they're at. So that South Park Hill area, North Park Hill, Sunnyside, up there is kind of one of the places where you see that big price difference. But you got to be on that like to like items. Tri-levels to tri-levels, bi-levels to bi-levels, ranches to ranches, 2 stories to 2 stories. And as you get out further in the suburbs, as you get out into where you get out of Denver and get into the Arvada, Thornton, Aurora, Greenwood Village, Lone Tree, Centennial, I'm trying to think, Ken Carl, Southwest Denver, you start seeing different neighborhoods. And then you start seeing houses that were built in the 60s and 70s, which are even more suburban. So that inside that C470 corridor is kind of one of those places where you're looking at those houses are really similar when you get there, but they're also different. And you can't comp them. Ranches, if you comp different ranches to different ranches, you got to be careful too, because as you're looking, so here's a tip on Zillow, and this is really important. If you take one thing out of this podcast, it's that you've listened to. Zillow looks at properties as a full square footage. So if you have a ranch property that is 1,000 square foot up and 1,000 square foot down, Zillow lists that as a 2,000 square foot house. Okay? Now you have to make sure that you understand there's a basement in that house, because if you go look for a 2,000 square foot house, you're going to be comping it to a 2,000 square foot ranch that does not have a basement. Or when you look at just the numbers, you're going to see a 2-story house that's 2,000 square feet. And you're going to get thrown off. So don't let those numbers, don't let Zillow throw you off when you're looking at numbers. I'm always looking for the upper square feet separate from the lower square feet. Okay? Basement living area is not as valuable as upstairs living area. Okay? It's still valuable, but it's not as valuable. So you really have to be careful with that stuff.
Another big tip you gave one of our students this week on the coaching calls was he was looking at some of the lower end comps of the houses, and Tim's like, ignore those, because he's like, why? They're comps. And he's like, we're going to be high end. We want to look at the high end. We want to go in and be the top listing house in that neighborhood. So don't waste your time looking at the small ones. Another thing to consider too is ranches to ranches, also the age differences. A newer house is going to have, of course, is going to have fewer problems. But some of the older houses, chances are, if they've got two brands of electrical boxes, you're going to have to swap it out and do usually an entire complete rewire of the house. A lot of the houses have two-prong receptacles. You know, when you walk in and go, okay, let's add electrical to the bill, you know. So age is a key factor, too. If you get an old house, compare it to older houses. And if you get an old one, not to say it's not a deal. We've got one where we had to get two houses where we had to go in and completely do the electrical, new boxes, new wiring, everything. But as you know your numbers, it worked, and the light was still green at the end of the spreadsheet.
Yep. The other thing in Denver and anything in the northern part of America, garages. Garages in Denver are really important. So if you're comparing a house without a garage to houses with garages, you have to be careful. In those older 50s neighborhoods, Englewood, Arvada, Wheat Ridge, you'll run into a bunch of houses that actually don't have garages, but they look like they should. And what happened in the 50s was when you only had one car, you could suffer without a garage. So you made that into living space because at the time you were living with mom, dad, two kids, and grandma and grandpa. They were multi-generational houses. So those are really still around. So be careful if you're comparing those houses without a garage to the ones with a garage. Oftentimes, can you put a garage in? Do you have an alleyway or somewhere to put it? Look at that. Garages are running about $30,000 to put in right now. That's your basic garage. You have to get permits and you have to get approval from the cities, but can you put a two-car garage in? And then, you know, that leads us into the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit, which is a big talked about item nowadays with the government and how the government is changing the rules. The Colorado state government wants more ADUs. Now here's the issue. To build an ADU at a property costs a lot of money. All right, about $300 a square foot. So if you're building a 500 square foot ADU, it's going to cost you $150,000. Will you make that money back? If you're building an ADU, it's so you can rent it. Can you rent that? And when you rent that ADU out, are you renting it out for $2,000 to $3,000 a month? And remember, we're in 2025 right now. Rent's about $2,000 to $3,000 a month for an ADU. To make up $150,000 is going to take you over 10 years to make that up. So is it worth it? Or if you're going to build a garage anyways, maybe it's not that expensive, and maybe the extra $130 you're going to spend is a good deal. So ADUs really help, but when you're looking at comps with ADUs, without ADUs, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, right now that the ADU does not add value because most people who are buying single-family houses aren't buying them as investment properties. They're buying them to live in.
One other tweak it's becoming a trend with us in our 6 active flips is Tim can't stand have to go outside for your laundry room. and it seems like all the houses we're finding, the laundry room is outside. You've got to go outside.
So this is in Mobile, Alabama, in the South. All right, before everybody sees we jumped around because we kind of went from garage to all of a sudden outside of the laundry rooms. In the South, garages aren't that big a deal. All right, they have carports, and as Jim's saying, they have laundry outside. You know, I hate laundry outside. I think it's crazy. Yeah. It's hard enough to get the laundry out of the basement, let alone go outside.
Especially when it's cold. Down there it's hot, but we've come up with very creative ways to bring that in. One laundry room was outside in the shed, and there was this hallway next to the dining room wall. We just enclosed that, cut a door in. All of a sudden, we had laundry off the dining room with double French doors. Yeah. Another one we had two houses we're looking at is they had the garage, but they had enough space where we came out just a little bit and we went through the kitchen. We created a pantry, laundry room, utility room with a door out to the garage, and there was still room under that carport to bring the cars in. So
yeah, and for future episodes, we're going to really take a deep dive into Mobile, Alabama, and out-of-state investing. But right now, let's go backwards to finding these deals. Neighborhoods. the neighborhoods are really important. Once you get out of the core Denver neighborhoods, you start getting in these suburbs, and the suburbs have added benefits, right? You go to Highlands Ranch, you have 4 rec centers that are part of your HOA dues. In Centennial, Arapahoe and County Line Road and University, there are a bunch of neighborhoods there that have swimming pools. And so the summertime swimming pool areas, Greenwood Village has it, Arvada has it, Wheat Ridge has it. Those are really what we're looking at, and they change the price. HOAs change the price of what's going on in your neighborhood. So be really aware of that. If you're looking at a neighborhood that seems like it's a good one, make sure it's in an HOA or it's not in an HOA. There's a community at Orchard at Arapahoe and Yosemite that one side is Hunter's Hill, the other side is Walnut Creek or Walnut Hills. One has a HOA, one doesn't. You can't tell the difference. The only way you can tell the difference is part of the houses have RV parking and lots of cars on blocks, and some of the houses are painted pink, and the next side of the street, they're not. You can't compare both, but a lot of newbies will buy a house in Walnut Hills, think it's in Hunter's Hills, and get burned on that. So be really careful about that.
Yep.
So we got to wrap this thing up, right?
A lot of stuff goes into this, and
Yeah.
we've just touched the tip of an iceberg. We would encourage you to come to one of our Invest Success Mentorship classes for free. As our guest, you can sign up on our website, invest-success.com. Look in the top right-hand corner. There's a button, Join a Class. And if you've listened to this far, we're going to throw you a special treat. If you've seen this, say, Jim, I want to save $1,500. We'll discount you $1,500 on the mentorship program. We've got a 12-month program. We've got a 90-day program for experienced people. But if you can't squeeze in that, commit to that much time, we've got a 3-day all-inclusive boot camp coming up the Marriott Courtyard on Curtis in Denver downtown. It's 3-day. We take our course. We've added courses to it, food included, hotels included, 2 days of field trips. Awesome time. With the hotel, it's $19.99. Just come and take the classes and the meals, it's $14.99. You cannot beat that with a stick. A friend of ours said she took a lot less course, but presented for like $3,000. So come see us, invest-success.com. Come join us at our boot camp. Come join us at our class. Join us for the John Fisher's Breakfast Club the second Saturday every month. Our happy hour in Rhino at Blue Moon Brewery is the first Wednesday of the month, and we're working on a happy hour down towards Tech Center Lone Tree. So come see us, invest-success.com, and we'll see you next time around.
Go out and do a deal.